Here we are again, back to our vanilla route. And by vanilla, I don't mean that, or that, but vanilla in terms of RPG. Yes, the mage has been a staple of most, if not all, RPGs with the fantasy component, which is why it never appealed to me that much. In today's video, we will check what changed for fire mages in 8.1. Quick disclaimer, this is not a guide or tips video. I'm still dabbling in mage and cannot really make a proper educated guess aside from what I see in terms of performance and community impressions. With that being said, let's talk a bit about mages. Mage was always too universal, too bland in terms of its place in the game. Don't get me wrong, I have a huge man crush on Khadgar and keep wondering, due to his strength, why isn't he a bigger part of the story? I mean, he fought Deathwing, closed Dark Portal, and gave us the best quests in the game. My man crush remains unsatisfied. But not my playthrough with the Fire Mage! Holy shit, this is fun! I've been playing Warlock, Shaman and Priest when it comes to range casters so far, and it's super hard not to put Fire Mage above all of these in terms of playstyle. I admit, the crit RNG can be a little bitch sometimes, but with my current shitty gear, I can understand that. I can only imagine it gets better with more gear, as with most classes. And checking the logs for mythical gear, it seems Fire is the best performer out of the three, even though Arcane seems to put out more numbers. Rating aside, Mythic Plus seems to be where Fire Mages belong. The core mechanics of the spec plays out really well in dungeons. There are a lot of things that go into Fire Mage's playstyle, and if you've played Fire so far, you already know this. But if you're new and are still undecided about what spec or class to play, let me very briefly explain the cores of the Fire Mages. First off, we have the Hot Streak mechanic. The Hot Streak mechanic makes your next Pyroblast or Flame Strike be instant cast once you get the proc, and the way you get Hot Streak is by getting 2 spell crits back to back. Now this sounds simple yet RNG-ish, however, as opposed to many other casters, you have a lot more control over your crits and you get tools to manage them, and the way you manage them will set you aside from the other Fire Mages. Combustion and Fire Blasts are 2 of your most important crit generators that help you create a crit chain where you pop Pyroblasts one after the other. Combustion is a 2-minute cooldown that makes all your spells for 10 seconds crit 100% of the time, while Fire Blast is an instant cast damage spell with 2 baseline charges that will crit 100% of the time with or without combustion. Another core concept and a big strength of the Fire Mage is the movement, mobility. With the talent Shimmer that lets us blink while casting without interrupting the cast, of course, we can afford to hardcast a lot more than other classes, and you will need to hardcast with talents such as Pyroclasm. And Scorch, of course, is a spell we can cast while moving, helping us maintain some DPS while dodging mechanics. And if you take the Searing Touch talent, you'll get a very strong execute phase where you can essentially spam Scorches and instant Pyroblasts while never having to stand still. With the assortment of offensive cooldowns and mechanics we have as Fire Mages, we become very good at taking down high priority targets, be it either in single target or cleave. All of these strengths work towards making the Fire Mage really good for Mythic Plus and raid bosses with important adds to take down. The very strong cleave that Fire Mages have can also backfire in certain situations, since it's automatic, meaning that if you don't intend to cleave to a certain mob, maybe because he's CC'd, you'll have a harder time managing your rotation. Also, the cleave is only on stacked mobs. There is no effective way to spread cleave the same way Affliction Warlock operates. But other than this, which in my opinion is not as much a weakness as is a niche, Fire is very compatible with this expansion's content. So far, top performer for mage specs in raids and one of the best DPSers in dungeons. Not to mention, if your cup of tea is PvP, Fire is also the dominant spec, or was so far in 8.0, but seeing that it did not get a lot of changes, chances are you are good to Fire in arenas for now. The actual changes to fire are very minimal. Meteor has had its dot extended to 8.5 seconds up from 8 seconds. The overall damage remains the same, it just is spread out over half a second more. And that's it for spells. Told you, very few changes. In terms of AZERITE, fire has actually gotten a big nerf on Blaster Master, an AZERITE trait that makes your fire blast increase mastery for 3 seconds and stack. The stacks are limited to 3 and the buff has received a big nerf as well. As with all specs, one AZERITE trait will be going away and that trait is Preheat. Preheat was a relatively boring trait that made Scorch increase the damage of your next fire blast, which limited the availability of the buff since you would only cast Scorches while Combustion was up and during execute phases. In its place we got Wildfire. While wearing this trait, Pyroblast deals additional damage and activating Combustion will give you a big crit strike boost. The buff is also applied to 4 nearby allies, but with a reduced effect. Right now this trait seems to be one of the best, aside the old gear traits of course. But again, the best way is always to sim your gear to figure out which is right for you. Another new trait that all mage specs got is Quick Thinking, which is an inner trait that gives you some sustain in forms of small heals for our instant cast spells, which of course works lovely for fire since we have so many instant spells that we want to dish out. And well, this is it when it comes to the changes. Based off of these details, I cannot see Fire Mage dropping in performance, but of course the other classes might surpass it. That's very hard to judge until the new raid is out, and as far as Mythic Plus is concerned, I don't see Fire Mages having problems in the near future. Fire Mages also received fewer changes than most classes and specs, which is a good sign that it's in a better place balance-wise. We all know class tuning will never be perfect, but on a scale of Marksmanship Hunter to Sub Rogue, Fire Mage is doing amazing. If you haven't tried it out already, I highly recommend it. It's fun, it's engaging, it has more depth and management than most other DPSers. Thanks for checking the video guys, and we really appreciate your support. Hit those comment section below with your thoughts on Fire Mages and maybe what class you want to see next. I hope you have an amazing week, happy holidays, and see you next time.